Well, on our discussion now, we are talking about Garri, the grainy flour obtained by processing cassava, and is a staple food in Nigeria and many West African countries. As a byproduct of cassava, it's expected that the price of Garri and cassava are positively related, and yet sometimes it doesn't seem that way. That's why Favor Oguniroyi joins us now to talk about it. Favor is a research analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Hello, Favor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, the price of Garri has risen by 42% to 18,500 naira per 50 kg in the last 12 months, while the price of cassava has risen by 60% to 57,000 per ton. One would have expected that both commodities will record equal price changes. How do we explain this?
Food inflation is at 22.28% now, and we've seen that the price of many commodities have increased at a faster rate than that. And in the case of Garri, the reason for that increase would be that the raw material itself, which is cassava, the production has been hampered by insecurity, increased insecurity that we're seeing in the nation now, and also climate change issues. So the less rainfall that we witnessed in the last year has affected the yield on cassava. And then now looking at the linked commodities, cassava and Garri, we saw that the price of Garri is also increased at a slower rate than the price of cassava. And several things could be responsible, and one could be that cassava is a raw material which has to be processed to derive certain things such as cassava flour or cassava starch and even ethanol. And so apart from the fact that it's a byproduct for Garri, we also see that there is high demand for cassava. And apart from the fact that there's high demand for it, as a raw material, cassava cannot be substituted as compared to Garri, which is a processed commodity, and it also has substitutes. So we guess that's the reason why there's that big price differentiation between the two commodities.
Okay, so as we see increase in the price of Garri, also see increase in the price of the substitute. But do you see the substitute taking the place of Garri in the nearest future?
Normally, when the price of Garri should increase, consumers will switch to the substitute, just like you said, and then that will reduce the demand for Garri. But then the fact is that presently there is an increase in the price of most commodities right now, and while that is happening, income levels are either flat or even declining, or they're basically not increasing. So in long term, what consumers can do is either cut down the spending on non-essential commodities so that they can afford Garri or the substitutes, or they might even be forced to reduce the consumption of Garri and the substitutes. And when there's that reduction in consumption and demand, manufacturers will they will not be incentivized, and they might have to cut down on supply as well, and that will affect the price.
So does Garri have export potentials, or is it just for us here in Nigeria?
Talking about export potentials, definitely exporting the raw material itself, cassava, is one thing, and that's a huge advantage for Nigeria, considering the fact that we are the largest producers of cassava globally. So that's huge chunks of revenue right there. And apart from just exporting it for people who want to produce Garri, there are so many uses of cassava, just like I mentioned earlier. And there's also the potential that Garri can be exported to Nigerians in diaspora. And talking about that population size, that's huge. I'm talking about like millions of people. So, and there's the fact that getting these local or African food abroad is quite pricey. So there's that opportunity there to export Garri in order to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Nigerians are already doing that, exporting Garri to maybe their friends and families, just to make it a formal industry and capture it into the economic data. Well, thank you so much, Favor, for sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.